So, hello everybody, and welcome to what I know will be a really enjoyable conversation. With me today, I have John Wilkinson. Hi, John.
Hello, Scott.
What I thought we might do today is share a few challenging thoughts around de-risking change programs. I know that's something that's close to your heart, so we'll have a little look at that. People watching or listening, if you go to the chat section on GoToWebinar and type your questions in, we should have a few minutes left at the end to address those. So send them into the chat function if you would, please. So let me just let me see how this works here. Here we go. All right. So Josh Bursin a couple of years ago said, 70% of corporate change initiatives fail. 70%. I was staggered by that at the time, and I'm still staggered by it even now. And I'm guessing that people have tuned in today to find out why that is, why so many fail, and what they can do to be in the 30% that succeed. Actually, so let's just have a little look at that. I thought the first thing we might do actually is sort of define change. I'm much of the opinion that businesses don't change just for the sake of it. There's normally some external driver. Someone like Uber comes into the market and completely changes the business model. There's new technology. We talk about the Internet of Things. We talk about robots and chatbots and all of those things. These cause changes to the business environment. So does the government, mergers, acquisitions, Brexit, dare I say. They all change the business environment, and that causes an organisation to want to move from where it is into another sort of organisation, changing its business model, the way it's structured, the different tasks that people do, or where they do that business. So John, I mean, is this you get out and meet lots of companies? Is this the kind of thing that you're seeing? Does this resonate?
Yes, absolutely. And we're seeing companies being forced to change themselves in order to be able to compete, and it includes anything from mergers and acquisitions to streamlining new financial constructions. And of course, as you referenced, we're seeing Brexit a lot at the moment, with concerns about relocation, about ensuring that organisations can hold on to their best talent as Brexit takes effect, or the fear of Brexit comes into play. And yes, the 70% of corporate initiatives failing doesn't surprise me very much at all. I do see a lot of stop-start initiatives, but also some where they've stopped for good reasons, and alternatives are found for those innovative organisations who are actually listening to what their employees are telling them, and realise that may be a false start and they need to rethink what they're doing.
Right. I mean, there's a big example that's been in the news recently, which I think is a good illustration of this, and that's the two retailers in the UK, Sainsbury's, British-owned traditional supermarket in some respects. They're looking at merging with Asda, which is again actually a traditional British supermarket but has an American owner, owned by Walmart. So they're looking to merge because the market's changed because of low-cost entrants into the UK retail market, but they've got international ownership and two workforces that I guess will be trying to think about, hey, what does this mean for me? Typically, companies merge because they're looking to streamline some of their central functions, so there'll be a whole load of people in their headquarters functions as well that sort of need bringing along on this journey. And as you sort of look at the research and the literature on this, I suppose historically there have been two different camps. Those that Harvard Business Review, for example, you can read a lot on there about what are called the hard factors of some change initiative. So, how long does it take for businesses to merge, or how long does it take to change the business model? How many people are required to actually make that happen, and what's the new financial result? So, you know, companies are looking to become more profitable, usually as a part of this through reducing costs and addressing their market needs. Deloitte, on the other hand, say, well, soft factors really play a part. You know, what's the culture of the people? Are they ready for change? Do they feel like changing? Leadership, how is leadership helping or hindering the change? And, you know, underlying that, what's the motivation of the staff? So I thought we'd have a little bit of a look at this. I actually have a hypothesis. One of my sayings in life is, given the choice, choose both. And you know, why shouldn't we apply it here? So can you just talk to us a little bit about the soft factors? You know, is culture, for example, is that a blocker or an enabler, do you think, of change management?
I think culture is both a blocker and an enabler of.
You're choosing both.
I'm doing both again. Yeah.
Right.
I agree with you completely on that one. There's little point in trying to force change on a workforce that is risk averse or averse to change, and worse still is trying to create large-scale organizational change, and you don't know whether the workforce is resistant to change or not. And under those circumstances, the outcome will be that it takes longer to change. The results that you want out of that change are not forthcoming. You may well lose good people along the way, and so there's a real requirement to get that culture right at the start. Firstly, to understand what that culture is. Is it averse to change, or do you have such a great connection with your leadership that there's an open, honest dialogue taking place, that the organization have the type of environment where they understand the direction the company is going in. They understand the challenges that are being faced and what their role is in helping the company to overcome those challenges. So, you know, a leadership who are concerned with culture, alignment, engagement, they can tap into employees' deep knowledge, experience, and most importantly, the goodwill to understand where those pitfalls are and where the opportunities are to achieve a great outcome from change.
Yeah, we did some market research last year, asking people in industry what were topmost in their mind, which sort of topics were topmost in their mind. And one that came out, I think in the top 5 from memory, was that in a lot of businesses, it's felt as though the leadership is becoming detached from the workforce, and that's often because this sort of, a lot of change programs require digitalization. You're digitalizing your business model, you're putting it more online, you're connecting people in a different kind of marketplace, and it's almost as though it's very easy for the leaders to make those decisions on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's the people on the front line that are probably much more tech savvy, they're much more used to internet always on, and you could argue that the workforce is often millennials and the leadership isn't, for example. I've seen that's a kind of an interesting sort of dynamic that goes on sometimes. That's a topic for another day potentially. Let's I think the outcome of all of that, though, is if we choose the hard factors and the soft factors and look at those, we're all about risk reduction, aren't we? We're all about trying to make sure that the program succeeds, whatever that program is. Now, one of the things that we have helped lots of businesses with, of course, is the traditional, if you like, annual engagement survey, and that absolutely has a time and a place. In times of change, though, you look at that and you sort of think, well, maybe we're identifying changes in engagement after they've already happened, and so you make changes in the business, engagement changes, and then you have a look to see what's happened after the event. It is clear as well that there are different drivers for different parts of your business. So during this change program, maybe it's 6 months or 12 months. People will join and people will leave. As I said, the leaders react differently to people out in the field, react differently to headquarters, and so treating them all with a broad brush approach during a time of change means you might end up with this organizational blind spot. And for me, I think the thing that we help businesses with the most in many respects is making decisions. And I look at this and I think, so are businesses making decisions about big changes without using all of the information available to them, all of that information and knowledge that's in people's heads?
I think you're absolutely right. I don't think many organisations are able to tap into the information that's in their employees' heads, and both from the point of view of the trust and belief in the leadership, but also because the leadership doesn't often ask them in the way in which they enjoy providing that feedback. I think for many of these organisations where transformation fails, if the company knew at the point of failure what it was that they should have asked at the start, it would have been a completely different matter. They would have asked the right questions at the start, understood where the risks were in the project, understood where the opportunities are, tapped into that underlying knowledge that their employees have to allow them to change the business. It's the employees ultimately that have the insight to get through this successfully. Now, linking back to the point about culture, if the leadership team can communicate effectively the reasons for the change, if they can communicate effectively what it's going to look like by the time the change is complete, and the employees buy into that, then you will get that goodwill. Now, to get that to happen, you need to be able to engage the employees in a dialogue about those reasons, to get that feedback, to identify parts of the business that have completely bought in, are aligned, and the leaders that are driving that change successfully, probably because of their communication style, probably because of their openness. But you also need to identify other parts of the business where you have hotspots of employees who don't get it, who are resistant to that change, and who may be absolutely vital. Their talent, their skills, their knowledge may be vital to the success of the business the other side, but they're not coming along with that change. So getting down to a granular level, granular both in terms of understanding team by team how aligned they are to that change, but also understanding month by month. This isn't something you just do at the start.
Right.
This is something that you have to do.
But are you saying, though, that if you get enough of that knowledge at some point, whether it's halfway through a program or whether it's right at the start, that you would actually recommend to companies, don't go ahead with that change, stop the change, postpone the change?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think organisations can save millions potentially by not going through change projects that are ultimately doomed for failure, and by understanding the information at ground level, you can assess those risks correctly. You can also understand what it's going to take to be able to do this.
Right.
What resources you have to put in. You probably have a business plan at a fairly granular level of what the business is going to look like after that. And if certain elements of that cannot be achieved, or a high risk of being of failing, then you shouldn't go ahead. But at that point, it's not a matter of you don't change. You still have to change.
Right.
It may be a matter of there are going to be alternatives.
Right.
And let's go and look at the alternative. Let's ask the teams what the alternatives are.
So
let's help them find their way around those roadblocks.
Quite a few times there, you're talking about information. I said, so businesses don't have all of the information they need. You're saying, well, with the right information, you can do course correction and so on and so forth. Let's have a look at the kind of things that the information, if you like. Sentiment and engagement are two things that we talk a lot about, where sentiment is that kind of question: how was your week? How's it going? Was it fantastic? Or is it, thank goodness it's Friday? And as we know, sentiment can go up and down on a weekly basis. What the literature says and what we see in practice is that while sentiment goes up and down, it has a knock-on effect on engagement, because if you're not feeling great for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, then your engagement starts to go. And again, there's lots and lots of evidence out there that a drop in engagement leads to people leaving, people becoming absent, people turning up and turning off. We sometimes say, I think that's called presenteeism, I think, actually. So and it can drive turnover of your staff, etc. So I suppose if these are the sorts of things that we should be measuring, how often, we've said there's a place for an annual survey, but during the period of change, we should be measuring sentiment and engagement, I suppose, is what we're saying here. How often should we be doing this?
I think you should be measuring sentiment regularly. I mean, weekly is a very good way
Every
to measure
week.
sentiment. But if when I say measure weekly, you go, whoa, how can I possibly answer all these questions? Because your mindset is, oh, I know what an annual engagement survey looks like. And the trick here is to be able to survey your teams in such a way they don't feel as if they're being surveyed.
Okay.
There's a very quick and easy way for them to engage. And I think let me go back, I think you're quite right in terms of the combination of sentiment and engagement. And I think if there is a negative sentiment and you pick up that negative sentiment week after week after week, and you can track that, at some point, if it's a continual negative sentiment, it's going to start to affect engagement. It starts to affect your goodwill. It starts to affect your discretionary judgment. Sorry, not judgment. Your discretionary effort,
right,
to the organisation.
But it might affect your judgment as well, actually.
Well,
mightn't it?
It may well affect your judgment. If you're living in a constant negative frame of mind, it's bound to affect your.
I mean, it's a big decision for people whether to stick with a business through a period of change or whether to quit and go and find somewhere else. And that's just a human reaction. And it's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought about that before in terms of the way in which it affects your judgment as well. So we can ask people perhaps on a weekly basis, how was your week? How's it going? Through a period of change, there are some words appeared here on the screen: recognition, leadership, teamwork, and so on. What's the connection between sentiment and those concepts?
So if you can connect the reason for an employee's sentiment to one of those categories you see in the center of the screen,
okay.
Then you can start to build up a pattern of understanding what would need to be changed to improve the sentiment and to prevent a continuous negative sentiment turning into a less than fully productive and aligned engagement.
Right.
So we would suggest that you monitor that sentiment weekly, very quickly, very easily, and particularly you look for the areas of leadership and communication. I mean, those two of the set of categories there, leadership and communication are the two big ones as far as change is concerned, that would cause you to become concerned if you're constantly seeing a negative sentiment.
I think that's right from if you like, a top-down view, teamwork, leadership, communication. From my perspective, if I were an individual and it felt like change was going on, I'd be really interested in some of the others. Do I feel involved? Do I feel as though my team is involving me? And if we do something really good, then are we being recognised for that? So I think what you're saying is absolutely right from top down, but it's really important for me to think about the individual person as well, and that leads to other things like well-being as well, or work-life balance as well. You go through change and people's jobs are going to be changing what they're doing. Some people will be spending a lot more hours in the office and some might be spending a lot less in the office, and so tapping into those things, I think, are important as well. I guess that's why there's such a range here. Learning and development as well. People want to continue to grow through a change, and certainly some people see change as a great opportunity to pick up new skills, to do new roles, work with new people. So there's lots of positives there as well, I think, which is a bit what the message of that slide is.
So I completely agree with you that, and I would add to that as you measure this change, you need also to be able to ensure that you understand the team at a sufficiently granular level that the line management can then start to pick out the hot topics that affect that team and start to delve a little deeper into why are you feeling this way? Why are you categorizing the reasons for your emotions, your reasons for your sentiments being in these particular areas? But if you know that there's been a business event or an organizational event that has caused a level of impact, then you want to enable the management team and encourage that management team to be able to delve deeper into that, and to then surface the types of actions that can be taken to improve the engagement.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, asking questions about engagement, sentiment, we've spoken about. I think perhaps asking questions about the change. What are the kind of things we could be doing? I do understand the changes, why we're making them, and so on and so forth. That really helps to get the buy-in. And I think that's the information that allows you to do the course correction, because you see small changes in sentiment, engagement, whether people understand what's happening. You mentioned communications. That will allow you to make course corrections to what you're doing. For me, I think the absolute sort of pot of gold in all of this is, if you understand the sentiment and you understand engagement and how people feel aligned, and you put the course corrections in place, they start to feel a part of the change in a positive way. And to me, it seems like a business will turn a corner when the individuals in the business start making suggestions as to how the change management process could be improved. What else could we be doing? Or we're not doing change just for the sake of it. We've said that. We're doing it because we've got some competitive external pressure, typically, or some vision that's causing us to change. And so to get your employees, your staff, everybody to be thinking of new products, new services, new ways of doing things, when you've turned that corner, for me, that feels like you really have got an engaged workforce going through this change with you.
Yeah, you're right. Because at that point, employees feel as if not only are they in an environment where they're being listened to, but they're also in an environment where the management and the leadership are taking action on what it is they're telling them. And there's nothing worse than being asked for feedback, providing feedback on a regular basis, and nothing happening as a result.
So take action.
You have to be able to show they'll take action. You have to communicate back saying, we heard you. This is what you're telling us. Now we need to decide on the action, and bringing the team with you. Surfacing from that team what they know, what they understand, the experiences they've had, aligning them with the vision and the direction, some of the challenges of the company will allow you to surface the actions that need to be taken.
Well, let's have a little look at maybe a couple of customers that we've helped. Danfoss, very large German-based company, and we've been helping one division of theirs, particularly the Power Solutions division. And they, like many manufacturing, mechanical, electrical, industrial kinds of companies, are going through changes due to globalization, for example, and automation and all of those great things. What we've really helped them to do is to put in place this continuous feedback loop. It's very constructive. It's very open. I was still staggered by this. 98% of their staff feel that this new survey approach, this new dialogue, this new continuous listening, they see there's an improvement. So nearly everybody, if you like, is coming along on this journey. And so they've really moved the workforce through this change with them. But key to this was acting upon the feedback. So once they'd been, surveyed the staff, found out what was happening, do the small course corrections, really understood some of the changes they were making and how they were affecting people. They took actions to continue on that, to uncover the best practices and to drive those through the business. And really, I think it's that closing of the loop and taking actions on what you find means that people are much more engaged because, hey, I'm being listened to. Some of my suggestions are making their way into the change program as well. So I feel like I'm a real part of it. So that's one company in Germany. I think you've got another example there.
I do. I have this is a large global pharmaceutical company. It's actually based in Europe, and their challenge was that they were going through a period of digital transformation, and rather than wanting to drive this purely from the point of view of an HR communications, they wanted the line management, the line of business, to be able to take responsibility for delving into the hot topics. And so they wanted to have an ad hoc survey approach, which allowed the line management to tap into the knowledge of the employees as they went through this change, and build a a dynamic culture, as you were just talking about, constant, continuous listening and continuous acting to build that level of trust and to surface those opportunities and those risks that the company can act on.
All right, fantastic. A couple of really good examples there. We quite often get asked, this is fantastic, who have you helped? Good couple of examples there. Bringing this into land a little bit, just summarizing the things that we've spoken about. People love golden rules, so here's 5, print them out and stick them on your desk. As we said, make a change readiness assessment. Is your business ready for change? Be brave. You might want to postpone the change management program. You might want to stop it or do something else. You've got to understand the culture and the leadership before you set off on this journey. Know where you are before you set off, and you stand a better chance of getting there. On that journey, constantly track progress and the efficiency of the change. So are the changes that you're introducing being effective, being efficient? What's the feedback that's coming back from the employees who know much more about the business and the day-to-day processes often than the leadership ever will? And use that as a piece of information in making decisions, because otherwise you're making quite big changes to a business. And if you're not bringing the employees along on that journey, then you're not bringing the resources that you need for the future organization. Now, by taking action and by listening, you will enable that culture of change and dialogue. And then the sort of throwaway golden rule at the end is celebrate success, because as we've seen, we've helped a couple of customers there that we highlighted to be successful on that kind of journey. Right, we've just got a couple of minutes left for questions, so let me just open up the chat facility here. See, I've got a few questions. We'll probably just take 1 or 2 questions here. The first one is really all around, is this something that a business would do for themselves, or would they bring in an external consultancy? Because sometimes companies bring in other companies to manage the change programs for them.
Oh, definitely. And I've had conversations with a couple of large management consultancies who talk to me about multi-$100-million projects that they've been involved in. And one of them said to me that if only they had been able to do this at the start of the process, they wouldn't have engaged on the project, similar to the question you asked me earlier. But from their point of view, being able to monitor before, during, and after allows them to be more successful in the engagement with their client, and it allows them to win the next project and the next project and the next project. But they then start to develop a competitive advantage because they can more successfully predict a successful outcome.
So carry on listening after the change program sort of finished. I mean, you can argue that change never finishes, but once a deadline's been met for whatever that is, then carry on listening after that as well.
There's no end. Things continue to change all the time, but also you get additional learnings at the end of it, and you can more accurately measure the ROI, the return on investment of the change, and you can map it back into, this is what we expected the outcome to be. Have we actually got the outcome? And you can drive that down to quite low granular levels. You can also look at how the employees have felt about their entire journey through that, and what that may mean for them in the future.
So maybe just about a really quick answer for this one potentially. Is this something, this continuous listening during a change management program, is this something that should be driven by HR, or should it be something that's driven out of, I don't know, say the chief operations officer if it's an organizational change, or the chief technology officer if it's a technology change? So where's the sort of point of focus in a business?
So I think this is a huge opportunity for the HR organization. Whilst the sponsors of many of these large change projects may be the CFO or the COO or a CTO if it's a large change in digital transformation type change, actually, the people who tend to be on the front line of communicating with all of the employees and for taking the pulse of the organization, the temperature of the organization, ensuring that it's ready and it is succeeding with that change, tends to be HR. And this is one of those wonderful opportunities where HR can add so much value to large-scale transformational change to each line of business head and each C-level executive. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for huge value from HR.
Okay, so a really interesting answer. Thanks very much. We are bang on time. So thanks very much for your time today. Really enjoyed our conversation. I suspect we'll carry on our conversation once we've turned the microphones off as well. But
as always.
yeah, so yeah, thanks very much for your time today. And we'll maybe see if we can get you on another one of these webinars as well coming up.
Be very happy to do that, Scott. Very
Perfect.
happy.
Thanks very much.